What's up, Agency Go fam? In the last 6 months, I have built a community that has now over 350 members of agencies that are looking to grow and scale within this community, and also just to learn from how we've been able to grow our agency to over 4 million in revenue total, and how we were able to do it as 25 and 26-year-olds. And this community is something that I've always wanted to build. It's something that I've always wanted to grow and scale, and I'm really excited that we finally had the opportunity to do it. Now, what I want to talk to you about in this video is how you can build a community just like this. It seems kind of hard at first, but to be honest, there's some underlying principles that you can apply. And I want to show you how I actually go about with building my entire community, how I monetize it, and how I create a win-win opportunity for both the members of the community and also for our agency and the software itself. So let's jump into it.
Okay, so the thing is, if you're trying to build a community, the number one thing you have to focus on when you're first starting is you have to give them a very strong reason to want to be part of your group, right? There's actually an overwhelming amount of competition around communities. I was pretty surprised by this when I first started because I wasn't really involved in a lot of communities when I first became a agency owner. And so I was surprised that there actually were so many. There's a lot of different communities. And what I've learned since being involved in this process is that it's very competitive, so you have to have a strong call to action and you have to kind of rally the flag around something different. So our whole thing is partnerships. People know us for partnerships. And the reason why that's such a strong rallying cry is because people aren't really focused on that. A lot of other ones are focused more on lead gen and all these other things, which are not bad. And we definitely touch on those topics too. But I think because we focus on partnerships, and if you want to see like the Agency Go website, it's definitely helped us a lot. So I would say if you're going to get started here and you're going to build a community, really think through positioning, right? People know us for this, which is we guarantee revenue from referrals or your money back. Very simple, very to the point, and it's like a rallying cry. And it's a mission, because for us, like when I started, I have about $500,000 a year of attributable revenue to partnerships and referrals, right? And when I was growing my agency, I was getting so many referrals, but I couldn't figure out the right way to actually grow and scale my business through referrals because there wasn't a lot of software that allowed me to get more and then track it and monetize and all this stuff. Point being, without getting too much into software, like you should have a unique selling point for a community, right? You should have something different that's distinctive. Like if you have an Amazon agency, right? Maybe you can focus on how to help people build their Amazon agency specifically. That is a unique selling point. You have to be differentiated in some way, shape, or form, right? So just focus on that when you're building this out, and that should definitely help. Now, then it's a matter of how do you get people through the door and funneled, right? So the cool thing about a community is that it has natural viral network effects. So people feel FOMO when they're not part of the community. So we have over 7,000 people who have actually joined in this community, either by downloading a free script, by joining our email newsletters, by joining our social media profiles and things like that, who have been part of this large community. Now we have over 350 people now who are inside the paid community inside Agency Go as the Slack channel, also part of the software. But the thing is that when we first started, it wasn't, we were basically drawing people in through social media and through these lead generation scripts that we'd give away, because my agency booked 1,734 meetings last year from these lead generation scripts. And because of that, it basically was a really good hook to get people through the door and into the community, right? And so you need something that's going to be a really good hook in addition to a really differentiated community that's going to help you scale, right? That's very important. Now, as you kind of go through here, you can see that I post a lot of content on my social media. Twitter is something that's very popular for me. So is my YouTube. I'm always on my YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, etc. And what this does is it helps me get a very good feel for the actual community itself and understanding the growth of the community, and what it gives me a finger on the trigger, it gives me a pulse basically of what's going on in the community at large, right? Because if somebody is in your target market and they're not in your community yet, you still need to understand their needs, wants, and desires so you can get them into your community right there. It's very important. So I would say the first thing is have a differentiated community distinction, right? You have to have something different, new and unique. Then have a really good hook to get them into the community, and then consistently post content on social media to learn what they're interested in, what they want to know more about, what would help them, what would drive them faster to the community, and then make a huge funnel from this that essentially helps everything grow faster. The podcast is great too, and this is another little growth hack you can do. What I do for the podcast is I basically include it as a perk of the membership. So I say, if you are actually an Agency Go member, then we will interview you on the show. And we're starting to get a lot of traction on this podcast. It's actually growing pretty quickly. It's taken a while to do it, but now it's actually getting a lot of traction. You see like huge spikes now that we never had before. I mean, just like enormous spikes. And what this is coming from is people sharing the podcast. And so I'm actually going to be accelerating a lot of the sharing of the podcast to get more people to actually share it on a monthly basis. But the point is that we are basically getting people into the podcast. We're saying, hey, you can be on this podcast if you're an Agency Go member. Once they're on the show, then we push this out there. We get all this free exposure. People hit them up for their product or service, which allows them to get more conversions. And then it also is a retention strategy because people who are part of the membership can hear other people's stories by listening to the podcast. And then on top of that, the people who are on the show are in the podcast, are in the membership. So they're talking about how cool the membership is, right? And how cool the company is and everything. They're literally promoting you. I can't tell you how many times I've had people on this podcast, literally just other Agency Go members, literally to say how amazing the Agency Go membership is without me even having to promote it. They just say it on the show. And so that's really cool. Like basically it's a self-reinforcing viral effect that allows for positive word of mouth within the community and at large externally outside of the community. So I think if you have a show and you invite your members on a show and you have regular dialogue and communication with them, then you're gonna be in a really good position. So again, differentiation, hook, constant data reinforcing from social, and then a show that allows people to actually stay in the loop, stay involved, and be able to actually express how cool the community is to other people. That's going to help it grow a lot faster. Now to get into the nuts and bolts of the actual growth of the community, you can see here that when we first launched it, we had about 47 active members, 40, something like around there, 40. And then now it's up to 126. That's weekly active members. So what I'm excited about this number is even though we have way more people who are part of the community and engage on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, it's grown about 300%, which means that people are active. I have 126 people who are active agency owners who are actively engaging in this group on a weekly basis. And again, that number is higher on a monthly basis. You can see the claimed number here is much higher. And we get billed for those. So that's how Slack works. I definitely recommend using Slack, by the way, over Discord. I know a lot of groups are popular on Discord. I personally very much dislike Discord. It's not because it's not a good platform. I think it's a really cool platform, but the thing about Slack, which is really nice, is most businesses use Slack. Like they don't use Discord as their primary source of communication. And if you use Slack Connect, then what happens is you literally are actually showing up. I'm gonna try to see if I can find one in here. Okay, I can't really find a good example, but the point is that you actually are showing up inside their Slack workspace. And that's the benefit of Slack. You don't have to log into a separate workspace. You literally have it pop up right there. So the reason we have so much engagement is because these three channels, 8-figure agency group, leads, beta, and partnerships, are literally part of these people's daily activities. They are part of the actual daily communication efforts of their actual company. And so if you're ingrained into that, you essentially are enhancing their daily work efforts and making things better for their business because they're coming in a lot of times through Slack Connect because they're using Slack already. So I definitely recommend you use that instead of Discord. And I think the way Slack works, which is kind of interesting, we got billed $1,000 last month for Slack, which we're definitely going to eventually move away from Slack. But right now it's a very, very good tool for us. But basically the way it works is it bills you for only the active members. It doesn't bill you for people who aren't active. So you can actually add a bunch of people. They can benefit from the membership. Let's say you have a software, courses, or whatever, and as long as they're not using it, they're not going to get billed. But if they're using it, they're getting billed, which I think is a brilliant model. So I think using Slack is definitely a necessity, and building a community nowadays is definitely a necessity in 2022. So definitely get this going, get a Slack group going. It cannot hurt your brand. It's going to have insane retention. And if you think about it, right, a lot of agencies, and this is something that I was concerned about when I first started, I was concerned that, let's say I have a client that's mad at me for some reason and I have this community and then they basically just talk crap about me throughout the entire community, right? The good thing about this model is that it basically forces you to always have a good product because you have to be held accountable. So like for me, for instance, essentially what I focus on is a really good product because then the community is essentially self-reinforcing. So people will be talking about it, they'll be saying this is so good, so excellent, so amazing. And because the transparency has to be a must, because if you're aligned to the community, if you're hiding things from the community, everyone's going to know and then they're going to call you out inside the community. So it forces you to be transparent and to have a good product and have a good team, right? It's very important. So that's one driving factor of our growth. So again, just to recap, make sure you have a good proprietary differentiation. Make sure you have a good hook. Make sure you get data from social media. Make sure you have a podcast that can serve as a membership sort of retention strategy that they can actually promote the membership for you. Make sure you use Slack and understand how Slack works. And the very last thing I would say is you have to have some sort of daily heartbeat to the organization. There's a really good book called Scaling Up. And inside Scaling Up, what Scaling Up does is it basically talks about how there is a process where if you want to grow faster, you have to pulse faster. That's their like famous slogan. If you want to grow faster, you have to pulse faster. And what that means is you just have to have more interactions with your team or with your community. So for instance, we do the daily power hours, not weekly, because what it does is it attracts everyone to have a common sort of like water cooler to come and talk about anything, to network, etc. And it makes it more entrenched and makes everything have higher retention inside the community. The other cool thing that's nice, and this is like the final point before hopping off here, is if you have a daily power hour and you have people leading these power hours, so kind of like the admins, and then you have people in the community who benefit from being admins. So let's say they service agencies or they're coaches or whatever, and they actually are good and they're really solid and they benefit from talking to agencies, then you can make them admins of the different community, of the different daily power hours. And then these, like as you can see, Tom Leach, Colby Flood, myself, Jordan Ross, Zach Weave, these are all people that I'm actually not even paying to be doing this because they get so much benefit from leading these administrative power hours, right? They get benefit from being constantly in front of these different agencies who are members because people will hit them up and say, hey, I really liked your power hour. Can we work together? And so that's something you can do as a daily touch point and to keep this group super active. So I actually plan on having more power hours. I want to have like, 10, 20, 30 a week and have different admins for those so people can constantly have a touch point. And then if you record them, you can just save them all in one place. And so our Agency Go members can view all the power hours in one place just by going here and looking through them. But if you don't have that set up inside your app, you could just have an Airtable that people can go to and visit if they want to view all the power hours themselves. And so that's essentially it. That's how you want to build a community in 2022. I really hope that this has been a valuable resource for you. I hope you rewatch it and use it as a reference multiple times because I know it definitely would have helped me at the beginning when I started the community. I just think it's a necessary thing nowadays in 2022. You really can't get away with not having a community because the other companies are going to be basically getting more customers, having more virality, and have a better product, the ones who have a community. And because you don't, you're going to always be at a disadvantage to them. So I really hope that you do start one as soon as possible. It's a really requirement nowadays. Thank you so much for watching this episode. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe if you want more content just like this. And if you want to learn how to build a $2 million agency or even a $4 million agency, which is what I was able to do in 5 years, please like, subscribe, and share this channel. Thanks so much, guys. Peace.